50 years ago, God sent out John and Jeanette Corey, along with their daughter Melody, to Ethiopia, and Southwest had the opportunity to participate with them. 4 years ago, as John talked about, he challenged three African pastors, to read Romans 20 times, to write it out, and he would give these messages on Romans. That's when the Romans Project began. 2 years ago, John went home to be with our Lord Jesus. But before he went to be with our Lord, he left us his vision, and he left us his constant prayer. And a couple of things I would just like to highlight is, one was his vision to see 1 million pastors in Africa, 1 million pastors who can't receive training any other way. For most of them would be trained through the Romans Project. And then secondly, his prayer and his vision was that these teachings, Scott's teaching on Romans, would be translated into Amharic. And so what's happened over this time is today, thanks to your prayers, thanks to your also incredibly generous giving, it's not 5,000 that John was speaking about a couple of years ago, 3 years ago or so on that video, but today we have over 13,000 pastors that are part of this Romans Project training already. And we're in these 7 African countries, and so we're on our way. We're on our way to the million, if you think about from 3 just a few short years ago. And what's happening now, though, with this translation project that's happening next week, we have the opportunity to begin to expand these 7 countries into these other countries that are highlighted here. And we're going to do a translation project of Scott's sermons into Romans into 6 different languages. The first language, of course, including Amharic, which John had prayed for and which we've been praying for and looking towards all along. But one thing that you may not have realized, it was a surprise to me, that there are 130 million English speakers in Africa. So we already, with what we're doing right now, have opportunity to reach 130 million English speakers. But when we add these translations, when we have these translators that are going to give these translations to put on the MP3 player, all of a sudden, 130 million possible that we're able to reach is going to jump to 250 million. So we'll have access to 250 million people with the gospel just by doing this project that we're doing next week. So let me tell you, though, about what's happening right now. Because right now, already, Rick Kallenberg and Marshall Brown are in Kenya, and they are teaching the Romans Project right there. Matt Miranda is there with them, and he's capturing this conference on video, or he has captured it on video. And then pray for Justin Veneer. He just graduated college yesterday, and he's on a plane today, and he's going to join them tomorrow. And so all of this happens before the rest of us even start going to Ethiopia. But what's happened is, yesterday, let me just read a note, if I could, from Rick, because his time in Kenya, he sent this note last night about, it was 8:39, as a matter of fact, his time last night. And he said the final total for today's conference was 1,301 pastors. And so this is in one conference in Kenya that happened just yesterday. So as you think of these numbers of what God's doing, I mean, as we speak, God is using this training for his namesake. He said it's a banner day. Literally, banners were up around the town. There was a tremendous response, and one pastor said, and he quoted a pastor, "This Romans Project is calling us back to the beginning, away from the current preaching to the real gospel. It's exactly what Kenya needs." And so the pastor said, just thank you. And then Rick went on to say, he said, Marshall did a great job, and he's contextualizing. Matt got tons of great video. Ken, who was the project coordinator for Kenya, said he's one of the best contextualized communicators of the Romans Project message we could ever hope to have on our team. And so these Africans are leading the charge in Africa right now. And he said people resonate with the message. They laugh at his humor in their presentation, and even as he speaks about the unbiblical preaching that's happening there. And in just two conferences in Kenya, we've had a goal, or they set their own goal actually, of 5,000 pastors just in Kenya just this year. And in 2 conferences, they've already come close to reaching 2,000 pastors already. So he said we're way beyond schedule, and it should happen. So Rick said, please tell everyone at Southwest, everyone at Downtown Bible, thank you for praying. So thank you for praying. What happens this week, though, is on Wednesday, Scott and myself and a team of guys are going to get on a plane, and we're headed to Ethiopia. And so we'll get there for the weekend, and on Sunday, Scott will preach in a church in Addis Ababa, and they'll send me out to the bush to preach in a church that Sunday, and then Monday, there's this conference is going to happen. And if I could give you a little picture of what the conference is going to look like, Scott will be in the front of all these Ethiopian pastors and church leaders. An Ethiopian will be standing beside him for a week and be translating everything he says as he preaches through the whole book of Romans in 1 week. And every time I say that, people chuckle like you do. And it's been the running joke, but I don't think Scott's laughing anymore because it's coming. So pray for him. I mean, that's 20 hours, 1 week, preaching through all of Romans. And while he's preaching, while it's being translated, the plan is to have these other translators in booths or tables at computers, and they're going to be listening and translating also into their languages, and that'll open up these other countries. And part of this too is when we opened up the Philippines last year, and you gave towards that, and towards opening up the Philippines and extra countries. I mean, just a reminder of what you did. You gave $90,000. And so we thank the Lord for that, and we see what's happening, what God is doing with your prayers, with your resources, with His people. And so one of those languages, actually, that'll be there too, is Tagalog. And so we'll have our Cesar, our Romans Project coordinator in the Philippines, is going to come join us in Ethiopia to translate it for the Filipino community as well. And so a lot happening. During that too, there's going to be a conference within a conference, and because as Scott's doing this translation, then Marshall Brown is going to be coordinating all that happens with that and making that happen for the translation. And Matt Miranda, Josh Williams, Justin Veneer are going to be making sure we capture that on video and helping them with the audio. And then Rick and I will be doing a conference within a conference, and we're taking some of these other guys listed here, Mark Havener and Carl Salo and Hunt Schuler, and just business community leaders. And we're going to go and we're going to see what the Lord is doing there in Ethiopia. We're going to go do a Romans project in the bush, several 110 kilometers away from this main conference, do some evangelism there in Africa. And so pray for this conference within a conference too. Then Scott and I and the rest of the team, we come back after the Ethiopia trip, but Rick and Marshall and Justin and Matt, they keep going. They'll go to Ghana, and then they'll go on to Nigeria, or at least Rick and Marshall will, to teach in a seminary. And I know I've poured on a lot here, but there's a card that's in your program, and if you'll take that, the schedule that I just walked through is on here, and so you can digest it during the time that you have to look at that. And but use this to pray for the team. And there's even a schedule of day by day during the Ethiopia part specifically, and the other parts that you can pray for real time if you would. And there are some prayer needs here that we just put up on the screen for you of Scott's teaching. of technical challenges. I mean, think about all the challenges of getting this on audio and getting this on video and all that brings about, for the translators, for the health and the travel of the team as the team's going, for all the pastors that are there that are listening, and for the villages, for the people that are affected by this. And I mean, it's still one of those projects that $25 a first grader can give it and affect the whole village. Or a business person could give $250,000 and affect an incredible region for the gospel. And so we're praying as God continues just to lead us in this. But we also, one other thing this morning, we have a very special guest. We have a privilege of having Jeanette Corey with us here this morning. And so I'm going to actually invite her up. And we've asked Jeanette if she would just come and if she would take time to pray over this team as they go as well.
Well, I don't know what John can know from heaven, but if he was here, he would be so thrilled. Because when we first went to Ethiopia in '64, down at a station in Ethiopia, southern Ethiopia, it was small stuff. I mean, he was teaching Amharic, just out of language school, but teaching Amharic to a few pastors that hardly knew Amharic. They knew their tribal tongue better, but anyway, they were there trying to learn from the Bible in Bible school. And starting out, we were just there from language school. John hardly knew Amharic. He would study and study and study, get maybe 10 minutes worth, and then write it on the blackboard so they could copy it, and the students just sat there looking like they'd never been in school before and had no clue. But anyway, talk about interesting. Now the pastors can hear, learn for themselves, and totally great, totally wonderful. I would say it's an exceeding abundantly above all that we can ask or think. Okay, let's just pray. Thanks.